Man, I was saying just before we started, in doing research on all guests and going through the notes, I just found myself, routinely saying, holy shit, to so many different things that you've been through, and just that never give up attitude and being in situations that I think for a lot of people would discourage them and make them say, you know what, screw this isn't worth it. And you just time and time again kept getting up and getting after it. And I just really appreciate you taking the time. I know, starting to run for congressional office is a painstaking and busy process. So I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate it. What's the last full book that you read?
Yeonmi Park, the North Korean defector.
Oh, yeah.
While Time Remains. I think her story resonates with mine quite deeply, where she escaped from a pretty horrible place. Vietnam, where I was born in, wasn't a horrible place until at the end of the war. We lost the war against the North, and the communists took over the country. But to understand where she came from and coming here and seeing America from the outside, and then actually seeing it, realizing that America is the beacon of hope for the world.
Yeah.
And how rare and precious this country is, and most people don't understand what we have in this country. There's an American dream, but there's no other dream around the world. Like if you go to England, it's not the English dream or Italian dream, it's an American dream, that's it. Yeah. And for me to be able to achieve that, what I've seen be able to achieve, coming over here with just the clothes on my back, is a testimonial, not to me, but for this country that gives you that opportunity. And that's why I'm fighting to make sure that my kids and your kids and our kids have a chance at that dream too.
Is there a component of that has embedded itself and driven you to run for office that you want to try to help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Put that into the American government?
I've seen war all my life. I was born in war. I lost my mom to war. I hate war. We needed military to defend our sovereignty and our freedoms and protect us. Our military is a killing force. It's not anything else beyond that. We certainly shouldn't be building nations, and we certainly shouldn't be policing other nations.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
It's going to be our children that can be sent to these wars, and I don't want them to get sent to wars for politicians, for military-industrial complex.
I love hearing it, because it seems like that's not as popular of an opinion as you would hope or expect within the House of Representatives.
Well, I'm not a politician.
Yeah.
I'm new to politics, but not to service. And again, I'm doing it because I want to save this country from where it was heading.
Amen on that.
The day of the ground war was Sunday, February 24th.
The first Gulf War, right?
As soon as dawn hit, we crossed the border, and it was an amazing, amazing experience where MLRS rockets were shooting across the sky, helicopters going forward. We were in the middle of the largest air assault. Kept on doing that for 3 days straight. I struggled with it at first because, growing up a Catholic, I was an altar boy, and I knew every time we stopped shooting, it means the target was destroyed. It was wartime, I still had that guilt. I stopped feeling the guilt after we hit Kuwait City and we found out the atrocities that the Iraqi army had done on civilians.
At what point did that stop, and how did it kind of close shop after?
It was actually more than 3 days. It was over 100 hours.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He's a Vietnam War refugee, having witnessed the Fall of Saigon. He's a 13-year Army combat veteran, seeing combat in 3 different operating theaters. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Nick, the man with the plan, Tran.
Thanks, Mike.
Is that, are we going to get a bumper sticker slogan with that on it, maybe?
I got you a shirt and a hat.
Awesome. Man, I was saying just before we started, in doing research on all guests and going through the notes, I just found myself, routinely saying, holy shit, to so many different things that you've been through, and just that never give up attitude, and being in situations that I think for a lot of people would discourage them and make them say, you know what, screw this isn't worth it. And you just time and time again kept getting up and getting after it. And I just really appreciate you taking the time. I know, starting to run for congressional office is a painstaking and busy process. So I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate it. What's the last full book that you read?
Yeonmi Park, the North Korean defector.
Oh, yeah.
While Time Remains, I think her story resonates with mine quite deeply, where she escaped from a pretty horrible place. Vietnam, where I was born in, wasn't a horrible place until at the end of the war, when we lost the war against the North and the communists took over the country. But to understand where she came from and coming here and seeing America from the outside and then actually seeing it, realizing that America is the beacon of hope for the world.
Yeah.
And how rare and precious this country is. Most people don't understand what we have in this country. There's an American dream, but there's no other dream around the world. Like if you go to England, it's not the English dream or the United Kingdom dream or Italian dream. It's an American dream. That's it. Yeah. And for me to be able to achieve that, what I've seen be able to achieve, coming over here with just the clothes on my back, is a testimonial, not to me, but for this country that gives you that opportunity. And that's why I'm fighting to make sure that my kids and your kids and our kids have a chance at that dream too.
Yeah, I love it. And the country for sure needs people with that approach. I think far too often it's very self-serving and ulteriorly motivated, and to see the benchmark of why you're doing it is to preserve the principles that made this country into what it is refreshing and appreciated. Obviously, you had a different childhood than most of the guests that have been on here. Is there a favorite thing that you used to do as a kid that comes to mind?
I grew up in the 80s, X generation. Summers were spent going outdoors. Come home from school, maybe make a snack, and then you're outside playing until nighttime. Yeah. I learned to swim on my own, just being in the summer. Spent the whole summer just swimming in the public pool that we had in the neighborhood. My dad was very, very strict, but very loving, and memories of him has always been very fond. Escaping Vietnam with him put us a bond that it's very, very rare, and it's hard to explain. He was like my dad and my mom.
Yeah. At what age did you guys leave?
So I escaped Vietnam on April 30th, the day Saigon fell, with my dad. I was 5.
5, wow. Do you remember much before that?
Before that, vaguely. We were somewhat well off. My dad was a colonel. He got out before I was born and worked for ESSO, which is Exxon. And he was tired of the corruption with the war and the government. He left the military before I was born and worked as an oil executive for ESSO, handling the imports, exports for the country. But not much before that. The night was something that I remember. The events, it was pretty traumatic. My parents separated when I was 3, so my mom had lived at a different part of the city, and during the Fall of Saigon, that part was captured, so I never saw her again.
Idea what happened to her?
I later found out everybody that was captured, that were left behind, went through re-education camp. That's what communists do. They re-educate you and saying the state provides everything and you're going to do everything we tell you. I had 2 older brothers, they're half brothers. We're a difference of 18 years old, so my oldest brother's 18 years older than me. And they both fought in the South Vietnamese Army, and they went to concentration camp instead of re-education camp. So they were beaten, and they went through some horrific stuff. Yeah, people who went through the re-education camp, like my mother and my stepmother, for a year or so, and they basically you're kind of broken after that. And you do your best to survive. I didn't find out till much later, a decade later.
Have you been in contact with her since at all?
No, she passed away in 2004, the same year my dad did.
Oh,
and
wow.
I never got the chance to go visit her. Back then I didn't have a lot of money. I was still struggling, and I never had that opportunity. And plus, there's always that you're going back to Vietnam, which is a communist country, and for us that escaped it, kind of hesitated
Sure.
to do that.
Yeah, I'd be worried that there in the back of your mind, no matter how unlikely it may be that they would kidnap you and throw you somewhere, like that would still be a concern.
I mean, it's rare, but growing up with my dad had a pretty large reputation in the South Vietnamese Army. He was the commandant for the military academy, similar to West Point, and they had a ransom on his head because of who he was and what he did. And so the family name carried through, and that's why I was never really want to go back to Vietnam, because of that family name.
Sure, that makes sense. What about your brothers?
So my middle brother, he finally retired. He came to the United States in '79 and worked for Baker Hughes for a while. Then he retired. He moved back to Vietnam because the cost of living is cheaper. The older brother is, he passed away from cancer.
Did you, were you in contact with them much between when they ended up in a concentration camp?
No, my dad got reconnected sometime in like 1977, 78, and then worked through the process of sponsoring them and getting them out. Everybody that came out later, including my stepmom, basically had to smuggle themselves out.
Wow.
Escaping a communist country through different means.
What year were you born?
69.
Were you aware of any of that as a child growing up, that your dad was involved in trying to bring them over, or was this something?
Oh, well, we came here in '75, and during the process, I mean, I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I kind of had an idea, but I didn't know much.
Yeah. So it was just your dad and you once you were here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And down in Houston?
We went straight to Houston, straight to Texas. In Houston, particularly, he was hoping to get his job back at Exxon, and that didn't pan out. He was too high level executive. They don't have a lot of jobs in that level. So after 6 months or so, and just couldn't find anything. He was overqualified for everything. He ended up taking a job at Stop and Go.
Wow.
A convenience store, sweeping floors. And it was just me and him, and we didn't know anybody, in this country, and didn't have money for babysitters. So I would stay home at night, and he would take the night shift. So he would put me to bed and then go to work, and then come back in the morning and get me ready for school. So that was, that was my, just growing up. I was 5 years old, and stay home, watch TV, watch Star Trek, learn English through that, and then just go to school and see my dad for a few hours, and then.
So you essentially learned English after you got here. I assume as a 5-year-old, it's probably a little easier than at 20. But,
oh, yeah.
But still, you don't speak the language. You're by yourself. You don't know anybody. It's just you and your dad. He's gone a lot. Did he speak English before he came here?
Yeah, he was very educated. He actually went to Command General Staff College as a lieutenant colonel in South Vietnamese. He went to, got to see West Point. And when he graduated, he came back, became a colonel. And he had spoken fluent French before that, studied in Paris. So English was his third language. English was also my third language. My second language was French, because France colonized Vietnam, and I went to French preschool.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't that hard. I learned fairly quickly.
Do you still speak French?
No.
Not really.
I wish.
Yeah.
I'll say a few phrases here and there, but you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah. So, to me, it sounds like you don't remember a ton from Vietnam. Obviously, there's still a foundation that's laid, though, in that first 5 years, arguably the biggest, frankly. I'm curious, from the time that you got here until, let's say, high school, was there ever kind of an almost on either side of the fence, or kind of riding the fence almost culturally with, the way your dad was, the way you grew up, and this new country of very different customs and culture? Did you find yourself noticing any of that, or did you kind of assimilate immediately and become an American kid kind of overnight?
No, my dad wanted me to assimilate very quickly. He had always taught me, like, when you go to somebody's house, you respect the house rules. You try to contribute. You don't demand anything. You just get on with it, and try to help out. So we didn't live like most Vietnamese people who conjugate in a certain part of town. We didn't do that. We moved into just a regular neighborhood. predominantly Caucasian neighborhood, went to a Caucasian school. I was one of two Vietnamese kids growing up in the school, or a large school in Houston. And so I picked it up. There was no culture change for me.
Yeah.
That was Americans was my culture.
Yeah. Were there ever growing up any flashbacks or conversations with your dad or anything like that about the fall of Saigon and the night that you guys were evacuated? Like, was that something that you thought of, or you were young enough to where you didn't remember it a whole lot?
I remember everything during our escape.
Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so it was a night before the fall. And my dad woke me up out of bed. Normally, he's very loving, smiley face, and he picked me out of bed, and his face was worried. Carried me downstairs into the basement, and my nanny and my grandmother were already waiting for us in the basement. And then he kissed me and ran out the front door. There were two military jeeps waiting for him, and he took off in the middle of the night. And at that time, I didn't know what was going on. But I was sitting in the basement, and there's a little window in the basement, a little transom window. And I would see flashes of light, and I hear like just thunder. I thought it was a thunderstorm. Being 5 years old, that's what I thought it was. And so I jumped on the table underneath the window and looked out the window, and in the horizon, you see like just flashes of light. It looked like a thunderstorm to a 5-year-old. And of course, that was the battle of the communist North Vietnamese and NVA encroaching on the city of Saigon, which is the capital city of Vietnam. My dad wrote me a book, a memoir of like our escape, so I would remember everything that happened in our lives here. And he said that in that night, General Van Lock, which is the last 3-star general, called him and said everybody left. They took off, they used their rank, their privilege, and got on American planes and escaped. The president, the chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he was like the acting Joint Chief of Staff left. And he's like, I need your help. I know you've been out of the military for 10 years, but you're a brilliant strategist, and we need to hold off. There's 20 divisions of North Vietnamese coming into the city, and we need to buy more time for people to escape Saigon. And my dad's like, no problem, I'm there. So got 2 jeeps sent to our house, and that's when my dad went to headquarters to help coordinate a counteroffensive to hold the enemy forces at bay.
How did that go?
So they had 2 airborne divisions left, and some fighter aircraft, and they fought for 7-8 hours, and was able to buy that amount of time for hundreds of thousands of people to escape Vietnam. Wow. And most of them lost. Most of the units were destroyed and lost, but the men fought to the end. I mean, unlike what you see in a lot of movies where they just dropped their weapons and took off, most of these men in those units stayed till the end because they were fighting for people in Saigon.
Man, that's powerful. I mean, to me, the gravity of knowing what they're doing and why they're doing it, and almost an inevitable outcome, and still doing it anyway, says an awful lot about the people, and my hat's off to those guys. That's incredibly selfless,
And my dad too. There's a lot of people who have many heroes. My dad's my only hero because he certainly could have used his rank, his privilege, and his money to get out of the country a lot sooner, but he chose to stay and help fight to save people.
Yeah,
we could have got out on a plane, but by the time he came back to get me in the morning, the airport had already been captured, and we had to find our way out by one of the last boats. And as we're driving towards the shore, most of the city had been it's like an apocalyptic nightmare. Rubble everywhere, burning vehicles, corpses everywhere. We couldn't make it any further on the Jeep, so we had to go by foot. And I was 5 years old. My dad told me to hang on in his back, and I put one arm underneath his right arm and the other arm over the way he taught me to, so he can have a free hand to use his .45. And as we were running into the streets, mortar was coming down, and he would tell me to close my eyes when we come up to like dead bodies everywhere. And he ran for about 1.5 miles till we finally got to the coast and found a small boat. made for 18 people, and over 100 people jumped on. And that was our escape out of the country.
Where did you guys go from there?
We had no plan. I mean, we just headed out to the South China Sea, made our way to the Pacific. And 3 days, we ran out of food and water and fuel. We had sent out SOS messages throughout those days, but we didn't know if anybody received it. And at nighttime, we would get run into some boats in the distance, and the guy with the little flashing lights, all he knew in Morse code was SOS. He didn't know anything else. He just did SOS, and people would send back messages, and he didn't know what they were saying, and so the people were thinking maybe we were pirates, so they never came by and rescued us. And that was part of the book that was kind of funny but not funny.
Yeah.
That all he knew was SOS, but he couldn't answer correctly, so no one ever came, because there's a lot of piracy happening in that part of the ocean. And on the third day, people started dying from dehydration. And we were sitting inside the wheelhouse, and I was laying on my dad's lap, and my head on his lap, and in the morning, heard a lot of screaming. My dad went out to investigate and see what was going on, and a young mother, probably 22 years old, had a baby that died in the middle of the night, and she woke up and just overwhelmed with grief, she jumped overboard and killed herself. And the people who saw her were screaming, but too weak to do anything about it, because people were dying from dehydration. And in that morning, around 11 o'clock, we were rescued by a U.S. Navy warship from the 7th Fleet. And they actually heard an SMS message, but they couldn't get back to us because our battery on our radio died. And they rescued us. And at that moment, I was... That's the moment I became an American.
Wow.
I mean, not legally, but in my mind, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be an American. America fought for our country. They rescued us. And they took us to Guam, where we grew up in that refugee camp, until we were granted political asylum to come to the United States.
Dude, that's incredible, man. I mean,
yeah.
At 5 years old, experiencing all of that, I just can't even imagine. You mentioned that people were dying. Do you recall? I mean, were there dead bodies on the boat, or were they rolling them off the side if they died?
They got thrown off board pretty quickly.
Yeah. Do you remember?
I don't remember any of that.
Yeah.
I mean, all I remember was just my lips were bleeding, cracked, and just so dried, and just dying of thirst, and looking out in the ocean and wondering why I couldn't drink, and asking my dad, begging my dad, just let me drink some of that water out in that ocean. And he just, you can't. And he'd dip his handkerchief into the water, and it just wet my lips just to provide some sort of relief.
Yeah.
And the thing I don't talk about much because it sounds fantastical, but in that morning I died. I had a near-death experience.
Really?
And when my dad took off to see what was going on, the lady that sat next to me, who my dad had asked to watch, said that I wasn't breathing. And in that moment, my body, I was feeling a lot of pain, just dehydration. I mean, near death for most people. Your lungs are burning, and your whole body was just aching. It's hard to breathe. And all of a sudden, I remembered not feeling any pain and just being just overwhelmed by light. And I see this being. It was like a woman. Couldn't see the face. I had a feeling she was just beautiful. And there's so much love and warmth, not warmth in temperature-wise, but in the feeling of being absolute love. And she told me that, I remember this, she told me that you have to go back. And me saying that I don't want to go back, I want to stay here, and said, you have to go back. And from that moment on, I didn't know why. But when I came back to, it was like 9:30 at that time. I came back, and I told the lady that was watching over me. She freaked out. She said, he's alive. And I called my dad back. And when my dad came by, I grabbed his hand. I was 5 years old. I didn't understand how to tell time. But I said, when this shorthand goes here, as a point at 11, And when the long hand goes here, we're going to be rescued. And it was like an hour and a half before that actually happened. So I predicted the future. And people think I was just delirious, but there are a few people that actually took their lives in that morning. And, but that went throughout the boat. Like, this kid maybe had a vision. It's like, got another hour and a half, I don't know. I'll just hang on just see what happens. And it actually happened. We got rescued at 11 o'clock.
Wow.
And my whole life I had thought, why did I get chosen for that? Maybe I got chosen for that because I'm destined to do something great in life. Well, 50 years since then, I haven't done much. So I figured, maybe I wasn't destined to do something great, but just to come back that day to keep more people from giving up, just hang on for just a little bit longer, because I know that little inspiration with me coming back and saying that I saw all of this didn't sound believable, but it was only like an hour and a half left, and people just hung on for that to just see what happened. And we were rescued right at 11 o'clock.
Wow.
So it was a gift that I was given that I've never had again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why I was chosen. Still to this day, I still don't know why I was chosen.
And so you've never had anything like that since?
No.
Yeah. Do you consider, are you what you would consider religious?
I grew up as Catholic.
Yeah.
I struggled with religion after fighting so many wars and seeing how religion was used against people. I still believe in God, but as far as religion, I go to a non-denominational Christian church, but I'm not that religious, but I still have a very strong belief in God.
Yeah. Do you remember your time? Well, two things. Do you know how many of you there were left that the Navy rescued that day?
Ooh, I don't know. I would imagine probably 70-ish, because there were over 100.
Yeah.
And several people died during the 3 days.
Yeah. Do you remember any of your time on that ship?
Yes, I remember just being thirsty, and thirsty and hungry, and it's just like it's hard to describe. You could survive 21 days without food, but you can't do it for 3 days. And on that third day, a lot of people died. I mean, I died for, I don't know how many minutes I did, but I just remember the feeling of absolute pain, like burning inside your chest, and then your whole body's aching, of like not having anything to drink, and my lips I remember it being cracked and bloody, and your eyes are dried. Yeah.
Wow. Do you remember like any of the logistics of, did they have you in a big open bay, or did they separate you guys? Were you on cots?
So no, absolutely no cots. It was a river patrol boat.
Oh, okay.
One of those PT boats that we use in river operations. So it wasn't made for open seas, but it was what was left. It was a Vietnamese PT boat that we bought from the United States. So it was American made. And
No, I'm sorry. I meant on the Navy ship.
oh, you mean the one that rescued us?
Yeah.
I don't remember much of that. They did give us some accommodation because my dad was with the General Venlock, the three-star general. So they gave us, I guess, decent accommodations. The only memory I have from that ship is standing outside on the deck, on the rail, and watching a sailor, just looking at the moon and watching a sailor eat a tomato. He had put some salt and pepper on it. Just staring at him the whole time, where my dad and General Venlock was debriefing the commanders inside.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And then you end up in Guam. Do you know how long you were in Guam?
Several weeks.
Several weeks. And then ultimately to Houston.
To Houston.
Okay.
Yeah, most people stayed in Guam for months, 6 months or so, but because when my dad had been vetted as and gone to Fort Leavenworth and to Command General Staff College, we were expedited to come to the United States. And we actually had a sponsor here in Houston who was a former U.S. Army officer who fought with my dad in the war, and so he sponsored us in Houston.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, all right, so you wind up in Houston, assimilate very quickly. a very outdoorsy Generation X type of childhood, which I can certainly relate to. As you got older and became more and more part of the American society, how was that? Did you play any sports? And then ultimately, what was the catalyst that made you say, hey, I want to join the military and do something? Can you walk us through kind of that intermediate?
Yeah, I knew I was going to join the military ever since I got rescued by the American Navy. I didn't play any sports. We were poor. And so I worked after school. I got a job when I was 13. First job was Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
I worked there for 3 days. And then my dad was like, how's it going? How much do they pay you? And I was like, they're not paying me anything. The owner said that, and I'm in training, so I don't get paid. And my dad's like, get in the car. So he drove me up to the Dairy Queen. It's like, you could either pay my son now, or you could pay him in court. So he just opened the cash register, gave me $40 for my 3 days, and he's like, don't ever do this to anybody again.
Wow.
And left. My dad was very strong, strict, colonel, military dad, very strict. I joined the military because he was so strict. I needed a break. But yeah, I just grew up, didn't do any sports, so just worked from Dairy Queen and worked for a supermarket, sacking groceries, and then I worked for a pharmacy delivering prescriptions until I graduated and joined the Army.
Yeah. Did you find it difficult to make friends at that point in your life and being here and being?
I mean, just in the 70s, late 70s, it was not like it is today. I mean, yeah, you got picked on, but I think kids get picked on for anything, being too smart to whatever. I got picked on for being Asian. I didn't care. I mean, it just rolled off of me. As I grew up, I had plenty of friends. I never really fit into, or never really got accepted into a specific group. I had friends from all different groups. Yeah. From all the what we call preps, the rich kids, and to like join the chess club. The group that I was most accepted was the surf club. Really? Every time there's a hurricane, we'll head down to Galveston and ride those 3-foot waves. Yeah, that's a trip. But yeah, I was friends with pretty much everybody, but really never belonged to a group. Yeah. Yeah, I can actually kind of relate to that. I was kind of in the same boat. I was never like in one group. I had a friend here or there from different ones. But yeah, I would tell you that my dad was not very happy that I joined the military. Really? Having fought in the Vietnamese army and seeing the corruption and seeing how America treated their soldiers when they came home from the Vietnam War. He was like, so I actually had to enlist in secret. I went ahead and signed all the paperwork without him knowing. And then I remember the night we had dinner, and I finally told him, I broke the news, I joined the Army. He was also pissed that I joined as an enlisted. And I qualified for everything. I took the ASVAB and GT and qualified for everything. Initially, I wanted to do military intelligence. I thought it'd be cool. Apparently, that's not how it's not recruiters work. It's like he had to fill his quota, and that month it was artillery. So I joined as a 13 Bravo cannon crew member. He showed me a video of some guys in military intelligence looking all nerdy and just sitting there, and he's like, "You want to do this for 3 years? Or you want to do this?" And you show him pictures of the guys jumping out of planes and rigging up howitzers and shooting. I was like, I want to do that. I want to blow shit up. Yeah. So pretty much everything your dad didn't want you to do, you did. Yeah. So it's kind of like the story of, Legends of the Fall, one of my favorite movies, where Colonel Ludlow was the colonel who had 3 sons. He left the military because he was tired of the corruption and stuff. And he didn't want his sons to join the military, and they all did. That was us. Yeah. That's amazing. I do have a note about a private cheesecake story. Oh, yeah. So my military career didn't start very well. So we, on the plane towards boot camp, we had a 6-hour layover in Fort Worth Airport. Never been in a Dallas-Fort Worth airport. Didn't know how big it was. So we had meal vouchers to eat, and I didn't eat until part of the last 30 minutes. I went and got a piece of cheesecake from the deli. I was munching on it, and the guy's like, "Come on, let's go. There were 6 of us going to the boot camp together. And I was like, I'll catch up with you guys. Don't worry, I'm gonna finish my cheesecake. So long story short, I missed the plane because of the piece of cheesecake going to boot camp. And the next flight out was the next day. So I went to base, got a cab, went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, found out where I was supposed to report to, and the cab drove up, and I see I recognize the guys, they're on formation, they're standing in attention, all stark and scared. And I get out of the cab, and I was like, hey guys. And the big tall drill sergeant looked at me and looked at the guys like, is that Tran? He said, I was on the list. And he's like, and then one of the guys like, yeah, that's him. And they're like, I was like, hey, I'm here. And drill sergeant's like, get your ass over here, Private Cheesecake. So that's what they called me the entire time I was in boot camp. I did more push-ups and flutter kicks and Indian runs than anybody else in the entire platoon.
Starting off on the good foot.
That's right.
Yeah, that's awesome. In terms of expectation versus reality, growing up in a military household and having a dad that was very strict, how was boot camp overall for you?
I struggled with the running part because I never did sports. I mean, I sprinted, ran like a kid would run, but never like long-term running. And I was small. I was 5'10" and 132 pounds going into boot camp, so just a stick. And thinking most people look at me and it's like, he can run because he's real skinny. Couldn't run. I fall out of runs. And at nighttime, I'm with the Fat Boy program, all the fatter kids doing extra PT. And it took a while for me to build my lungs up to realize that I can run. So drill sergeants didn't really think very highly of me in boot camp until to qualification day. And then I outshot everybody. It was like 40 out of 40 expert. And they're like, where'd you learn to shoot? And I was like, you taught me. I had never shot a gun before. Wow. So I had no bad habits, and just took everything. I just ended up being natural.
That's incredible.
And I've always taken naturally the guns, and I ended up competing later on.
Wow.
It's just for the Army.
That's awesome, man. And I see that a lot, actually. I mean, having been a student and then an instructor and then teaching marksmanship for contracting afterwards, I saw that all the time, which is also why I think a lot of times women become good shots quickly and more often because of that, because they've never shot. They have no misconceptions about how good or bad they are, and they just pick it up.
No bad habits.
Yeah, yeah. So you go through boot camp and your MOS training and all that. You end up at Fort Bragg. That's your first duty station. Mm-hmm. You just missed Operation Just Cause in Panama, right?
Yeah. So I was really upset about that. We had been on the hot seat for 6 weeks. You're on alert status for 6 weeks, and we just gotten off alert status the weekend before. And it was like Christmas time, so we went home. I went home for leave. And I'm watching on news that our sister unit went on, and they're jumping into Panama.
Wow.
And I'm sitting home going, it's supposed to be me.
Yeah, just missed it.
Yeah. And it was 2 weeks, they were back. They're done.
Yeah.
And they came back talking tons of shit. Mustard on their jump wings and combat patches, and just, they rubbed it in pretty hard.
Didn't last all that long, though, because not long after you end up going to the first Gulf War, right? Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through what it was like from initially hearing, hey, the balloon's gone up, we're going, to actually being on the ground? So
August 2nd, 1990, August 2nd is my birthday, and that's when I turned 21. We were in a club called Sid's out in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and the lights went on. DJ said, all soldiers from Fort Bragg, return back to base, your units are on alert. And we went back to base, and all our NCOs and officers had already gotten back on base in formation and kind of told us, hey, we're going to war. And we're all excited, and we're going to prepare for it, because this whole time in being at Fort Bragg, we had focused on fighting potentially the Soviet Union somewhere in Eastern Europe. So the mindset of that was who our adversary was. Now that changed. Now we're going to fight Iraqi soldiers in the desert, which we never had training for. So the next 2 to 3 weeks, we didn't have a definite deployment date because it was all in the air. we were focusing on desert warfare and understanding the different Republican Guard units that we're going to encounter and their technology and their tactics. And we had known that they had fought Iran for the last 8 years and defeated Iran. So we didn't know going to Desert Storm how the outcome was going to be. We were expecting heavy casualties. The night that we deployed, back then we didn't have cell phones. But they cut off all the power through the entire Fort Bragg base. They cut off phone lines, and we had already had our bags packed. And we got on buses in the dark and went to Pope Air Force Base, and we sat on tarmac and then flew out on commercial airlines. It was very, very exciting for us because we had prepared for that. You know, we're young, we didn't know what we were going to, but it was very exciting. And then we hit Riyadh, and when we first got out, the door was open. It was like opening the oven. It just hit you in the face. It's like, wow. And you know, we're hardcore Fort Bragg guys, and you start doing PT like we normally do, and start getting heat casualties. That quickly got stopped. And like, hey, we're not doing PT there until nighttime. And then during the staging area, and then we moved out into the border between Saudi Arabia and Western Iraq. I remember out in the middle of nowhere. I remember we pulled into position, and there was a high berm, and we sent out teams of machine gunners. I was with one of the teams, and we went over the crest of the hill, and in the night vision you could see like Iraqi positions on the other side across the border. You could see lights. They're probably 5-7 miles away. So we're trying to be real quiet. We're digging in, and it wasn't just sand, but it's very rocky. So I have to get a pickaxe to dig in a fighting position. Trying to be very quiet, very disciplined and light, and the noise. And then we see 3 guys walking across the crest, just light flashlights everywhere. They're like, "Hello, Americans." It's the French. And we're like, "Dude, what are you doing, man? It's nighttime. You got light flashlights everywhere, and the Iraqi troops are over there." And they had been there, and they saw us pull in. They came by to say hi. It's just like,
man, that could have gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
I mean,
so we stayed in that position until the deadline, which was January 15th, here in the United States, but we were 12 hours ahead. And on January 17th, I remember hearing B-52s flying over. We got in our foxholes, we mopped 3, and then that's when we launched our first rounds across, and we shot rounds every night until the ground war at Iraqi positions. Our howitzers were 155 millimeter howitzers, and can go up to 12 to 17 miles depending on the munitions, and we're hitting targets every night.
Wow. Do you recall kind of a ballpark average of how many rounds a night you guys were shooting?
Oh man, up until. Sometimes it was, 3-4 hours straight. Adjust fire. We were shooting RAP rounds, rocket-assisted projectile rounds. I struggled with it at first because, growing up a Catholic, I was an altar boy. Thou shalt not kill. And I knew every time we stopped shooting, it means the target was destroyed. And even though we never saw what we shot, we killed a lot of people. And just that guilt, even though it was wartime, I still had that guilt. And before I go to bed at night, I would pray for forgiveness, and sometimes I'd cry. I felt that guilt, and I stopped feeling the guilt after we hit Kuwait City, and we found out the atrocities that the Iraqi army had done on civilians there, and raping people and killing families, murdering people.
So with that, I guess how many days were you on the ground during the conflict? Do you remember?
Oh, we were there the whole time.
I mean, so
we got there. We got there around September.
Okay.
The ground war didn't start till February 24th, and we didn't leave the country till end of March. And there's no fobs there. We lived in Bedouin tents, no water, running water, and no electricity. We got to the point where we only ate like 2 MREs a day because we were so far in the front lines that couldn't get resupplied.
So with that, was that the normal mode of operations where shooting rounds for days on end and then moving forward and then setting up camp doing the same thing?
Yeah, we would, along the border, we would do that along the border until the ground war. And we fought all the way from western Iraq all the way through, past, all around across Iraq, all the way to Kuwait. And after we liberated Kuwait, we headed north towards Baghdad. The ground war, the day of the ground war was Sunday, February 24th. And we got, I remember the night, it was like 3 in the morning, we all gathered in a circle. The chaplain said a prayer, St. Michael's prayer, in a circle. We had arms on each other. And then after we said the prayer, we mounted our vehicles. I mean, it's like no one said anything. We were just dialed in. And then as soon as dawn hit, we crossed the border. And it was an amazing, amazing experience where MLRS rockets were shooting across the sky, just rockets screeching across the sky, helicopters going forward. We were in the middle of the largest air assault by the 101st Airborne Division. There were like 120 helicopters just flying, and they landed in our position. And they gathered and did some, I guess, planning, and then they all took off.
Wow.
And we're moving forward, we're shooting at targets, we're getting incoming. The only time we would stop is if there's like some Iraqi tanks in the front of our position. We would stop, and Abrams and Bradleys would advance forward, take them out, and then we'd continue to go past burning Iraqi tanks, and kept on doing that for 3 days straight. 100 hours straight, actually,
Yeah.
no sleep.
Did you guys witness and see just a ton of carnage in that way, seeing burnt?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I
absolutely.
remember seeing pictures and videos. I mean, I was in junior high at
Yeah.
that time, I was in 8th grade, and but I remember, even years later, seeing guys that had been there that had pictures and stuff. It seemed pretty gnarly.
Yeah, there was a time where there was troops in the trenches, and they had M117 troop transports with Vulcan cannons on top. And they would go over the trenches and just lay waste in the trenches. And then, we would see like just pink mist and body parts everywhere. There were a lot of troops in the trenches that we engaged, and we used white phosphorus
Really?
to explode 50 meters above the air.
These are white phosphorus howitzer rounds? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you would come upon targets that you guys had engaged with howitzers.
Oh, we would call it. We'd never see where it was. I mean, the closest we probably hit was probably 2 miles out.
Right, but I mean, like, as you're advancing forward,
Oh, yeah.
you're seeing the carnage of what you guys had been doing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's just thousands and thousands of Iraqi prisoners just on the highway, and we would tell them just go that way because we had collection points. Our job was to keep on going forward and attack, and we couldn't take them. Felt sorry for them. We threw MREs because some of them just didn't have any food for days, and then you'll see pockets of like MPs just collecting, and they're all zip tied and sitting in groups. I mean, there were literally tens of thousands of PMWs.
Wow. How did that set with you as you navigate through the carnage of what you guys had been doing? Did you, after seeing what happened in Kuwait, have a very different perspective, and did you hold that perspective and felt pretty justified in doing it, or did you ever
I
struggle?
felt justified, and I stopped crying, and I stopped. It's not like I cried every night, but I stopped asking for forgiveness because literally we would go to Kuwait, and then Kuwaiti people would just rejoice and saw us, and they pull us, hugged us, and brought us into their homes, and just showed us, like some homes, they were bloodstains on the rug floor. What they had done, they had hung the men up in the ceiling and then raped the women in front of the men, and they killed the entire families. And the Kuwaiti people were telling us about these stories. And the Iraq troops that escaped and headed north were on the highway of death. And of course, most of our aircraft took out those vehicles, but we also had targets on those vehicles that were escaping.
Yeah.
We shot copperhead rounds, which were laser guided. They had aircraft that were lasering the targets, and we were just shooting, and it was hitting tanks and vehicles.
Yeah. Do you have any scope of how many enemy KIA your guys' unit took out? I mean,
No idea. I mean, it's probably hundreds. I know that we took out the entire 7th Republican Guard Artillery Regiment, because that was one of the units that were facing us, and we actually took out the entire unit. So that unit that didn't exist after that war. Command went and did battle damage assessment, and it was just like they said, it was just carnage everywhere, like scattered the desert.
Did you take any pictures during
No,
that?
absolutely not.
No.
Anyway, we didn't have the cameras we did back here either.
Yeah.
I mean, the only camera I had was like one of those disposable cameras, and
Yeah.
no, I didn't.
Yeah.
That's something I wouldn't want to remember.
Right. Overall, morale-wise of the unit, were you guys kind of varsity squad mentality of feeling like you were kicking ass? And this
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
yeah. And it was 3 days of the ground war, advancing, advancing, advancing. At what point did that stop, and how did it kind of close shop after?
It was actually more than 3 days. It was over 100 hours, and we literally did not sleep during that time. We were just on fumes and adrenaline. I remember we may have slept like a few seconds here and there as we're moving positions. I remember it was raining, and I'm landing on top of 155 rounds. Rain's hitting my face, and you're not really sleeping because you know when you're stopping, you're jumping out of the vehicle, unhooking your howitzer, and you're going in. When we liberated Kuwait and we started chasing them up to Baghdad, we had already fought 278 miles through Iraq, and we had another 80 miles left to go when they called the ceasefire. And we were very disappointed because we never got to Baghdad, and we only 80 miles left to go. But I understand why they did it. And I remember after that, after the ceasefire, we actually slept.
I know it's, hypothetical, and hindsight's 2020. Do you think that if Bush at that time, Bush Sr. had said, nope, we're seeing this all the way through and had gone all the way to Baghdad, do you think that would have completely negated the Iraq War 10, 12 years later?
I always thought that we should have. But looking back now, seeing what we did in Iraq and how we created ISIS, and as bad as this may sound, that I think Iraq needed a dictator like Saddam to hold them at bay. I mean, look at the monsters that were created afterwards.
Yeah.
As brutal as he was, they needed somebody to control them.
I don't disagree at all. I think Iraq, I think it's easy to look at it, especially now, and I know it's convenient, to have that opinion, but I think the whole thing was a mistake,
I think we should not mess with people as much as we do,
Yeah, I agree.
and try to impose our Western values and cultures into another country.
Is there a component of that has embedded itself and driven you to run for office that you want to try to help
Yeah, absolutely.
put that into the American government?
I've seen war all my life. I was born in war. I lost my mom to war. I hate war. I feel we need the military to defend our sovereignty and our freedoms and protect us. But we shouldn't be fighting wars, and we certainly shouldn't be building nations, and we certainly shouldn't be policing other nations.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And another thing, Mike, the people who end up serving come from families who've served before. It's going to be our children are going to serve, whether I want them to or not. Like my dad didn't want me to, they're going to follow our footsteps and serve. It's going to be our children that can be sent to these wars, and I don't want them to get sent to wars for politicians, for the military-industrial complex. It's to protect our nation. Our military is a killing force. It's not anything else beyond that, and we shouldn't be.
I love hearing it because it seems like that's not as popular of an opinion as you would hope or expect within the House of Representatives.
Well, I'm not a politician.
Yeah.
I'm new to politics, but not to service. And again, I'm doing it because I want to save this country from where it was heading in the last 4 years.
Yeah, amen on that. When the Iraq War was over, like once you got the ceasefire, you got some sleep. Not long after, you redeploy, come home, right?
Yeah, we deployed, came back to Fort Bragg. It was the first time we had been in a major war since Vietnam. And so it felt great to have done what we've done. Very proud. But it was a very stark contrast to how America treated Vietnam vets when they came. Mm-hmm. And I think we learned as a country from those mistakes, and that's why we reversed it. I finished my 3 years at Fort Bragg. I got out and went to college. I finished about 51 hours and then never finished. And started working, developing a career in energy, made money, and realized once you get to a certain level in your career, you can't advance as a manager without a degree, or if you lose your job, you can't get a job as a manager without a degree. So eventually I finally finished my degree when I did it the hard way. I had done it when I had a full-time job, family, and a kid.
Yeah. I know that feeling for sure. I did the same thing. You got into the energy space specifically with, I'm assuming, oil? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who did you work for?
It was hard getting in the industry, not having industry experience. It's kind of catch-22. Finally got on board with a small company called Express Energy. They gave me a chance. And I got on and did real well. And what I found out did real well was in the oil field, they had trouble keeping people, getting people going in for the money. It's a lot of money. You make $160,000 without a college degree or anything, but you're working 70, 80 hours a week. You're away from home 21 days at a time, living out of your truck. And they had a really tough time keeping people. And I was the head of recruiting, so I had to figure out how to fix this. And I was like, well, vets serve in harsh conditions. They're away from home for a long time. They still got shit done. So I built a pilot program to hire vets into the oil field industry, and it blew up. Like, it was very successful. Most of the vets that we hired stayed and moved on to supervisors and managers and grew. And then I got picked up by Cameron, which later on got bought by Schlumberger, and I ended up running the veteran program for these 2 Fortune 500 companies.
Wow.
Over 100,000 employees, and made it the #1 military friendly employer in the United States, because I found out it wasn't just about hiring vets. I mean, a lot of vets struggled with transition. We hire vets, but there's other things we can do as a large organization to help vets with PTS, with even if we don't hire them, we can still help them, making them more marketable for other companies. And so we did resume workshops for free, LinkedIn workshops. We helped recognize older vets with Honor Flight, took them to DC. So we did a lot for the veteran community by empowering vets, whether we hired them or not, and that made our name within the space.
That's great.
And for me, that I found a lot of my healing through helping the people that mattered most to me, which were vets.
Yeah, that's awesome. As time goes on, you're doing well there. 9/11 happens. A few years after that, you lose your father, which was a huge negative impact on you. Walk us through the mentality, or the I guess the mental process of 9/11, losing your father, and ultimately saying you want to kind of get back in the fight.
Yeah, so I wasn't working at Schlumberger at that time. I was working at Dynegy, which was Enron's competitor, and it was downtown Houston. And I remember going to work in the morning. We had heard some plane and hit the tower. It was like, it was an accident. Maybe I thought it was a Cessna. You drove to work, and then the whole time in the break room, people would just gather around watching this. And then the second plane hit, and we all saw it in the break room. We're like, oh my God, this is not an accident. This is actually an attack. And then they sent us all home early. And when we found out what was happening, I was livid. I was angry. We were attacked. These were my people. And people jumping out of the buildings just to save themselves from not getting burned to death, and choosing that death instead. And I wanted to join right back in immediately, but my dad was older at that time, and I didn't want to leave because I still want to have that time with him. I didn't want to be gone and have him pass away. He passed away a couple years after that. It was the worst day of my life, because it was like, like I told you, he was like my dad and my mom. So it was like losing both parents at the same day. He died in November 15th, 2004. A couple weeks afterwards, and I ended up spending that Thanksgiving at the church, working and just try to help other people to get my mind off of it and kept busy. And then 2 months after that, after I was able to finish grieving, is when I re-enlisted tried out for 20th Special Forces. It was a National Guard unit, but if you get your Green Beret, you can go. And Mississippi was the closest unit that had that program. So I would drive to Mississippi from Texas, go through that program, Special Operations Prep course. Never made it. I was 35 at that time and still had an 18-year-old mindset, thinking my body was still 18 years old. And it was tough. I tore up both my knees, had torn meniscus in my knees, and didn't make it. But they saw how motivated I was, and I had combat experience, and I wanted to go. I wanted to serve. I wanted to pay back this country and put foot to ass to those who did this to us. And so I stayed in the unit. They asked me to stay, and we had an opportunity to deploy to Afghanistan. So I was in a support company, and so I did whatever was needed done. So I ended up doing a lot of resupply missions. I was the turret gunner in all these missions, and they quickly found out how well I could shoot. And so they made me a kind of PSD guy for a lot of our officers when we go on missions. I got to see the entire Afghanistan. We go all over Afghanistan, and either turret gunner or whatever. There's a job to be done, need volunteers, I was there.
As that wrapped up, though, towards the end, there was a V-bid that ended up.
Yeah, so I made it pretty much unscathed the entire deployment until like the last month. And third group had come back. I was in the 20th group. We were with 7th group. And third group had come back, and we were going out with the Germans just to get our marksmanship badge with the Germans. And we went through a market square. And normally, most Taliban, they don't kill their own because they get money for killing us. But it happened to be a couple of Pakistanis who crossed the border, and there was a guy in a Toyota Corolla who we drove by. We were in soft skin SUVs with the Germans, and he detonated and killed 3 kids in the market square. I didn't get any shrapnel, but I got rocked pretty hard. Just dazed. But was back on it pretty quickly. And our mindset, we were group guys. We're like, hey, get back in the mission, get in the fight. We picked up the one kid that looked like he was going to survive and drove him back to base and tried to save him, but he didn't make it. And again, I felt that deep guilt of not that we did it to those kids, but that VBED was meant for us, but it killed innocent kids. And not having that knowledge of being able to save somebody's life, really, I struggled with. Not that I don't know if I could have done anything even now, but at that point is when I wanted to become a medic, just to have some skill sets, just to save people. So after coming back from that deployment, I became a medic, reclassed, went to training as a combat medic. And then after I graduated from med school, I volunteered to go to Iraq.
Was the wanting to become a combat medic, did you go through, I'm assuming, military courses for that? Yeah. So you're still on active duty?
No, it was I was still a guard.
Okay.
But when you go through training, you're basically on active duty orders until you finish training.
Yeah. That's not the 18 Delta program, right?
No, it's I'm just a regular Army combat medic.
Okay.
But I was in a special operations unit, so I did have more medical training than your average combat medic, but not at 18 Delta level.
How long did all that training take?
Off and on 6 months.
6 months.
And I actually trained in Coronado.
Really?
In San Diego, we had some drug deal the Army had with the Navy. They had some facilities, and we got to go. We got lucky instead of going to Fort Sam Houston.
Yeah.
We were there for 3 months.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's like the most amazing place. The whole summer it was like 78 degrees.
Yeah.
The whole time.
San Diego's an amazing spot, no doubt about it. Man, that's incredible. There seems to be a recurring theme of events shaping your decision-making process and wanting to do something about it. The recurring almost St. Michael approach of the scales of justice and being very principled in your approach to responding to things that happen to you. How long was it between when you graduated from medic school until you volunteered to deploy to Iraq, and how did that
work?
A month? Did you just walk in and say, hey, I want to go to Iraq and be a medic, or?
Well, it was pretty in the heat of the GWAT, right? So there's always units going forward, and being in the Guard, we have announcements of, hey, this unit's going here, this unit's going there, and I searched through it and asked around. It's like, hey, 72nd Infantry Brigade's going, and so I was like, okay, sign me up.
Yeah.
And they always need medics because medics get to go everywhere, right? You always need medic support. And again, this is where my reputation superseded my goals of being a medic. My reputation of being a shooter came to light, and then I ended up being the brigade commander's PSD team leader, not a medic. So I deployed as to protect our brigade commander. It was a 3,500 man unit, and he was the brigade commander, and I trained the whole team on shooting and stuff like that. Of course, I was also the senior medic on the team, so it was a perfect opportunity for me. Not only was I a shooter, I was the head medic for the team, for this PSD team.
And you guys had, what year was this?
We deployed in 2009 through 2010, so your deployments.
Yeah. 88 combat missions outside the wire, and there was 2 soldiers that actually took their own lives on that deployment.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about that?
That was horrific. One was a 19-year-old girl. She shot herself with her Beretta, but didn't fully commit at the last second and moved a little bit, so it went into her head and blew up part of her brain, but it took her 20 minutes to die. And when we got her to the clinic, she was still alive and just crying, knowing that she had messed up, and was hoping that we could save her, but she expired. That you expect a lot of stuff in war. You expect to see your friends die. You expect to see enemy dead. You expect to see civilians dead. But 2 things I don't do well with is seeing kids get hurt in war, and then our own soldiers taking their own lives. It's just unnatural. It's not a natural thing. So that wore on me. The other one was a 21-year-old kid who deployed with his father in the same unit, and he took his life in his hooch. And that was nasty. And we had to take his father to the airport home with his belongings, because we were the PSD team, so we would drive people around.
Do you have any idea why either one of them did it?
I have no idea.
Yeah. That is absolutely tragic.
It is an absolute finite solution for whatever problems that are temporary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that unfortunately plagues the veteran community at a higher rate than any other aspect of our society, and by a lot. I can only imagine that that's also a benchmark part of, from a campaign standpoint, of something that...
Well, it was certainly part of my program, building the program for Schlumberger, was they just wanted a program to hire vets. I wanted a program to help vets.
Yeah. Not
just the job, but to get back on your feet. And I always pushed back and said, before we bring people into our house, let's make sure our house is fixed, to help vets find healing, like I found my healing, and it's not through drugs from the VA.
Yeah.
It's finding purpose.
Right. It's something I, end up having conversations with a lot of guys who sit in that chair, and that's always the recurring theme, is it's not traumatic experiences or injuries or what they've seen, what they've done, what's been done to them. It always boils down to not feeling like they're worth anything, i.e. they don't have a purpose. And the oldest question of time is, what's the meaning of life? And I think it's really that simple. It's purpose. Like you have to have a reason to get up every day and do something, and devil's hands or idle hands are the devil's workshop. I mean, that's so incredibly paramount to veteran communities that have experienced tragic things and loss at a much higher level, and concentrations of just wildly chaotic experiences, and they seem to always struggle if they come out of that and don't have a reason to keep going, and it's just tragic.
One thing I always try to help civilians understand is veterans are not the next charity class. Veterans are an amazing group of people that stood up and done something what most people didn't or didn't want to. They're the ones that help your company. It's not that we should be out there helping vets just to help vets to make us feel better, but we help vets because they make us as a society stronger. And for me, that there's a lot of vets that are leaders that we need to highlight more, because you see in movies in Hollywood portrays us as broken vets that can't deal with the aftermath of war, and that also hurts more next generation from wanting to serve. And that's such a disservice to our country to have that.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of, I think, components and moving parts that contribute to the tragedy that is, veteran suicide and that lack of purpose. Before we move on to the coming back from war, you did 88 combat missions. Mm-hmm. Were those pretty exclusively PSD routes? And
they're always they're all going out in the red zone.
Any gnarly ticks on any of those?
We had one where we got engaged by crew service guys, and this was under the Obama administration. I would tell you, like Afghanistan, it was like fighting with one hand behind your back. By the time we got to Iraq in 2010, it was like fighting with both hands behind your back. We got hit on Route Irish, and we couldn't engage these guys. We were good shots. We could have killed these guys. But the backdrop was a residential neighborhood, probably 500 meters from them. And they didn't allow us to engage. It's like, just push through. And I'm on the radio. It was like, you want me to push through and like leave it for the next convoy, U.S. convoy that's going to come through? And I was like, yep, push through. And at that point, I was like, I'm done. We couldn't do that. You're getting shot at. Guys from PKMs, we could have taken them out. But we weren't allowed to. We had to push through.
Yeah, man. That's a whole other can of worms, the rules of engagement. Yep. And I mean, I've said this a number of times on the show, and I'll say it again. I think, and it sounds like your philosophy is very paralleled to mine in that regard, is don't use us unless you absolutely have to, but if you do, let us do our job and take the gloves off.
Let the leash off.
Yeah.
I mean, we were there for too damn long.
Yeah.
We were in Afghanistan for way too long. I was on the World Affairs Council board, and I interviewed General McMaster. We had, similar backgrounds in the fact that we fought in 3 different wars, 3 of the same wars. And one of my questions to him was, every country that have tried to conquer Afghanistan has failed. What made you think that we would be able to? And the other question was like, what was your exit strategy for Afghanistan? And his answer was like, we'd still be there. And for me, that was amazing, because I totally disagree with that. It was like, what are you talking about? That means my children would be fighting in Afghanistan. We had to find an exit plan. We were there way too long, and we weren't accomplishing anything because they're so fragmented as a nation. There's no head. You can't control that. You have to know when to leave, but certainly not leave the way we did,
right? Which is
bullshit. And that was another reason why I'm running, because we will never allow us to be in that position again, leaving our allies alone there, and also the blood and treasure that we spent there for over 20 years to be just thrown away. That was deja vu for me, seeing people getting on helicopters from the embassy. It was the same thing that happened in Vietnam. Yeah. I was like, it was deja vu. I felt it again. I was so angry about that.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who wasn't. Every person that I've interviewed that has any semblance of involvement in the military has the exact same opinion, that it was just an absolute abortion the way that it was handled.
Yeah, and like by the time, what happened with us in Iraq, that we couldn't do what we had to do, it was time to go. For me, that was like, it'll never put us in a position where we're going to put our boys and girls into a foreign country and not be able to defend themselves. When it got to that point, it was over.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be there.
Yeah. All right, so you come back from war. You kind of came to the realization that you had PTS. I'm curious, what did that look like for you? What challenges did you face coming back, and then ultimately, what transpired afterwards?
Didn't know I had PTS. It was the mindset that we had, that special operations mindset. We're hard. We're war fighters. We're not weak. Keep them on moving and continue mission. It was when I came back from Afghanistan. I'm sitting at a red light, and I see there was 4 college-age kids in the car in front of me, African-American kids, and they threw out their bag of fast food. They just finished eating fast food. They just threw it out in the middle of the street. And I was like, the fuck? I got out of my car. I picked it up. I threw it back in there and said, hey, you dropped this. And then they're all thinking I'm crazy. And I just got back from Afghanistan. So I was like, okay, you want to fight? I'll take all of you at one time. I just take out the first guy and then we'll deal with the rest. And then they didn't do anything. And I got back in my car and I thought about it. It's like, yeah, that's pretty damn stupid. And then there were times where people would, I'd be driving the freeway and people cut me off and I'll chase them down and I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do now? Well, okay, that was pretty stupid too. I mean, then I started realizing, okay, I have a little issue here that I need to get addressed. So I went to the VA and diagnosed me with it, and they gave me a ton of pills. And I took the pills and I felt like a zombie, and I didn't care about anything.
What did they give you?
God, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 different ones.
Yeah.
And I just felt numb, and I didn't like that feeling. And I was like, I'm not taking this stuff. And then eventually, like I told you, I've always found my healing by helping others. Like when I lost my dad, I found somewhat of healing by working at the homeless kitchen at the church and doing things and keeping busy. And naturally, I found my healing when I developed that veteran program for the oil and gas industry and helping vets not just get jobs, but actually saving vets' lives, helping them find sources to deal with their PTS, where that's Freedom Service Dogs, which is another great organization. They rescue dogs from shelters and train them to be service dogs. Homes for Heroes helps build tiny homes for homeless vets, puts them in the community with a bunch of other veterans so they can bond together and heal. That's where I found my healing, and that's why I realized it's not through pharmaceuticals, it's through helping others. And the people that need the help the most, that deserve the help the most for me, were veterans.
I mean, to me, again, it just falls in line with a pattern in your life that to me is just super inspiring, and maybe more than inspiring, it's reflective of the type of character that I would love to see in all congressmen and women, all over the country. Is that, if you had to pick a singular principle, is that serving others. I think so often, or it seems like most people who go to our government from the House of Representatives on up, it's very self-serving, and it's for something that they're benefiting by having that position, whether it's authority, connections, money, whatever. I love to see it.
I can certainly tell you it's not for money. I make more in oil and gas than what I would make when I win as a congressman, because I only make $174,000. But in my website, I've already pledged, it's in black and white, that I'm donating 1/3 of my salary to veteran causes. It's not. I'll make sure that whatever money I donate to whatever organization actually moves the needle. So I mean, that brings me down to what, 110. I still need the money because I'm not Donald Trump. I'm not a billionaire, but I need to make ends meet, especially for my wife when I'm off. But for me, it's about service, and that's what I feel like we're missing in our servant leaders. They need to be serving and not for their own benefit.
Yeah. So, I mean, while we're on that topic, and I don't mean to gloss over, post-military time and the struggle, but there are so many components to your campaign that I want to be able to get into, process that is to get that. I'm curious, was there a catalyst that made you say, even knowing that, because you're a smart guy, I know that that's a big part of that process and a incredibly negative one. Was there a catalyst that was a light switch for you that said, okay, I'm doing this now, or was it gradual?
So you mentioned earlier that I've always been someone who's stepped up. I've never really been the person that sat around, saw something that was wrong, and not done anything about it and just sit there and bitch about it. The catalyst for me happened way long ago. We talked a little bit about growing up in the 70s, how it was for me. I got picked on a lot, got bullied a lot. The catalyst happened in middle school when I was in 8th grade. And it was lunchtime, and I sat there outside, and I saw a young freshman kid, sixth grader, get picked on by a bunch of jocks. They got pushed around, he got pushed to the ground, and they're making fun of him. And I got in, and I just, that point, something clicked inside of me. It's like I saw myself in that kid that had happened to me years ago throughout my life, and it just snapped. I went right in the middle of that group of kids that are picking on this kid. I just kicked the biggest guy in the stomach. I had taken some martial arts at that time. I kicked the kid in the stomach, and then I punched another guy that was standing next to him. And then they all took off and ran off. And they're like, oh, I'm going to tell Mr. Brailsford, which is the assistant principal who's known to give swats. And I was like, oh, shit. So I took off too. But at that moment, I protected that kid, but I ran off. But it was the moment I was like, you know what? If you have the ability, then it's your responsibility. So for me, it's like, okay, if you're there and you can do something about it, do it. And that's why I stood up to serve in the military. And then in the last few years, I saw how this country was going. I never thought I would be in politics. I never wanted to be in politics. I never had a very good image of what politicians are. But for me, it's like, I'm going to do something. I need to step up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the only way you can do it. Because there's not really any prospect of that entire process that I think is appealing to most people. And to me, there's almost a weird irony of, if you really want to do that, it should almost disqualify you from the position. I don't mean you specifically. I just mean, for the people that run because I want that position, not I want to change things. I want,
Right.
Because there is a ton of sacrifice, I think, that comes with even running for it, let alone getting that position. And I do feel for anybody in that position, in that it does seem a bit like a lose-lose, and no matter what you do, no matter what policy you either fight for or fight against, for that matter, even if you sit neutral and don't have an opinion, people are going to be pissed because you're not convicted enough to take a side. I mean, there really is like a you can't win, type of approach. How much of that either slowed your decision-making process, if at all? How did you talk to your family about doing it and being willing to kind of put them through the ringer with opposition research and stuff like that? And have you had any super negative experiences thus far?
It is a long process, not for me. For me, I've always been the guy that would jump up and volunteer to go. I've seen what it is like on the other side, and what I mean by other side is what happens after this life. I've seen the afterlife, so I'm not afraid of dying or anything that happens to me. Of course, I'm worried about my family, and I've had a conversation with my wife to make sure that she's totally on board, and she is. It is a sacrifice. It is quite a bit of a sacrifice, not in so many ways. As far as picking a side, I'm pretty clear. I think it's very important. You got to know which side you're on, and I'm on the side to support President Trump. I mean, for me, it's going to be. I know you have to work on both sides to try to get things pushed through, but there are very solid lines I will not cross. For me, it's understanding, most politicians don't understand that we are not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. And a lot of people say, oh, President Trump's, destroying our democracy. We're not a democracy. And it's sad that those who are in power making laws don't understand this. The Constitution is very, very important. Our founding fathers designed it. They were brilliant when they designed it. And for me, that is what I'm protecting. The Second Amendment is one of those. I will not. Without the Second Amendment, there's no other amendments. There's values. There's family values. The government needs to stay out of our families. And there's a lot of things that I know that you and I talked earlier that we agree on about wars and about the military. We shouldn't be sending our family members to war unless it is to protect us. It's not to police another nation, not to nation build. We shouldn't be sending billions overseas when Americans need help here. So those are very clear lines that I'm going to hold true to put America first and the agenda that we voted for, or at least I voted for. And this country is, again, I'm running because there's no place like America. And if America falls like Europe has fallen, there's no other place for us to go. I'm certainly not escaping and going anywhere else. I've done that before, and it sucked. So I'm digging my boots in, and I'm doing my best to save our country. I started a campaign May 2nd because May 2nd is when the American destroyer rescued us. In 50 years, and this year, 2025, was the 50th anniversary of that. Wow. On May 2nd, and that's when I decided to run because America saved my life on May 2nd, 50 years ago, and I'll run to save America. I think President Trump is the best president in my adult life. He's made good in all his promises, and he's doing it with true intentions. He's not doing it for the money, as we know. He's losing money for doing what he's doing right now. And he sacrificed so much for being president. Almost getting put in jail, almost assassinated twice. He's the president that America needs.
Do you have a top 3, a top 5, a top 10 from a priority standpoint? Like, are there a handful of things that these are your top priorities, and if so, what are they?
Yeah, protecting the Second Amendment is my top. Again, well, the Second Amendment, we don't have the First, we don't have the Fourth, we don't have anything. A lot of people don't think, oh, that guy has no sporting purpose. It's got nothing to do with sporting. We didn't just fight a war against England to make sure that we have sporting rights on guns. I mean, it's to fight against a tyrannical government. So Second Amendment is one. Protecting our borders and immigration. When you come, like I said, my dad taught me, you come to somebody's house, you respect their laws. For me, it's about you come into this country, you left whatever country you left for a reason. Don't try to bring that same stuff that made your country fail into the United States. Be an American. I'm against all the green initiatives. Climate change is something that happens regardless of humans. It's happened for millions of years. Until we find a more reliable energy source that's affordable, oil and gas is going to be around for a long time. You shouldn't demonize it. Oil and gas is where it's at. Solar and wind are not effective at this point. And the damage they cause to the environment is much greater. And people don't know this because of the narrative that's been spun out there. Law and order is extremely important as a priority. What's happened in D.C., what happened in L.A., and can't allow that to happen here in the United States. I'm fighting to make sure Texas stays red because if we lose Texas, we lose the country. And we shouldn't have pockets of Sharia law in this country. Again, that's coming back to the idea of coming into this country and respecting its culture and its laws. You don't bring your own laws in here and try and enforce it in this country. You shouldn't have Sharia zones and areas. We shouldn't be selling our land to foreign nations, especially our adversaries. We don't have any land in China. They shouldn't own any of our land. So those are some of the key things I'm going to fight for from a nation standpoint. In my district, we have problems with flooding. whenever there's a hurricane. Definitely focus on that. But to make us more prosperous and wealthy, by keeping the government out of our business. And a lot of the businesses try dictating, mandating that, hey, we need to cut costs here and there by price caps. And most politicians never ran a business, never owned a business, never worked in corporate sector, and they're making laws that affect that.
You're saying, and I agree with all of it. One thing I will say, or I guess I'll kind of work backwards because I wanted to talk about, well, I guess you talked about Second Amendment first. I want to talk about borders last because there's several kind of key things that I want to get your take on. But the energy thing to me seems like a no-brainer with small regional nuke facilities. You know, each state identifies how many nuke plants do we need for our state to be self-sufficient, you know, and not need, especially from a general power grid standpoint, is at that same time incorporating far more secure power grid metrics and systems, protocols, whatever, systems, so that they, you know, are a lot harder or impossible to be hacked. You know, I don't know what that looks like. I'm not the guy to develop that, but I know there's people that are plenty sharp enough to figure that out. To me, that's the easy answer, though, is that with technology being what it is now, you can do that safely, cleanly. And again, I think if you don't have single points of failure, there's not one big one in every state or, you know, 3 enormous ones that are fueling the entire country.
Yeah.
Like, it's way harder to even try to attack those. But then also if one fails or if there's a problem, you know, all your eggs aren't in one basket. I agree with the solar and wind thing. I think it's generally a gimmick and, you know, is stepping over dollars to pick up pennies kind of mentality, especially the wind. I think solar, like on houses, makes sense, you know, in some ways. Again, maybe not if you get the regional nuke facilities in every state to cover down. But in terms of the Second Amendment stuff, I'll cover that next. There's just really one question I have on that. I agree. I'm Second Amendment through and through. The fewer regulations and hurdles, the better. I am curious, 2 things. One, would you, having the authority, assuming you had the authority or the ability to push for, would you relook at nonviolent convicted felons being able to possess firearms? Do you still think that they shouldn't? And also, is there a line in any part of your mind where you shouldn't be able to own fill in the blank? And by that, I mean shoulder-fired rockets, tanks, mortars, you know, a certain size caliber sniper rifle. I mean, is there a limit in your mind at all, weapons of war-wise, that should not be able to be privately owned?
The counter argument for a lot of the people on the left is like, these are weapons of war. You're damn right they're weapons of war. That's what the revolution was about. It's a war. Yeah, they didn't have what we have now, but they used what were weapons of war at that time. And as far as like the weapons you're talking about, you and I know the steps it takes to get those weapons, to acquire those weapons. Like, for example, suppressors or machine guns. They're very cost prohibitive. The best analogy is that you're not going to rob a bank with a Ferrari that you bought. Okay, so you're not going to spend $100,000 on a machine gun to do some sort of crime with. As far as owning a tank, I know those are part of millions, aside from nuclear weapons or chemical weapons or biological, you know, basically weapons of mass destruction. I think the citizen who is law-abiding should have the ability to buy a tank if they want to, or an attack helicopter or a jet.
I don't disagree. I mean, I've had that. There's been plenty of people that, in the process of navigating political campaigns, of having well, no, not those. Like, I'm okay with small arms up to this caliber, but anything above that, no. Like, and I agree. Like, it's kind of an all or nothing thing, and
yeah.
I agree 100% with your thought process on weapons of war. Is that, you know, whether it's a revolution or whatever, anything in that realm, like, it's all bets are off. You know, and I think you need to allow people to do or have what they want to have. I know that that's not a popular opinion with a lot of the country, but whatever, that's my opinion.
Another unpopular opinion from my standpoint is to eliminate gun-free zones, including schools.
Yeah,
Because gun-free zones are target-rich environments.
yeah,
If a person is willing to commit felony and murder, they're not going to care about having a weapon when you're not supposed to.
yeah. Well, that and two, I think they specifically target gun-free zones because they know it's going to be a softer target. I think it's really a backwards way to look at it. I think. I mean, I think exudes ignorance.
I think teachers should have the option to
Yeah.
carry, and if they decide to carry, they should have also advanced training. Not force anybody to carry, because once you carry, you have that responsibility, extra responsibility.
Again, I don't disagree with any of that.
Where will we get the money for that? I would tell you, $40 billion not going to another country would definitely help with some of that.
Even in that same vein, protecting schools, you could hire armed guards for every public school in the country for the amount of money we've sent to Ukraine.
I mean, response time is not going to be fast enough for whatever happens, like
Yeah,
when there's an attack.
yeah. Last but not least, the border thing. I agree with everything that you stand for in terms of the principles behind your border policies. The big thing that I'm curious of, and would love to get your take on, is the controversy around the way ICE has been conducting some of their raids. There's a lot of heated opinions on this. I've had former guests and potentially future guests having a range of opinions on it. I'm curious to get your take on if we can all agree that there is a significant number of people who are here illegally and should not be here, even if not everybody's going to agree on whether or not they should continue to be allowed to be here or not. That I'm curious to get your take on that, but also as a practical matter, is that if your position is anybody here illegally should be deported, what is the way to go about that in a way where you're doing it the right way?
You need to prioritize the threat level of that person. 10.5 million people is a lot of people. Right now they're averaging 2,000 a day, trying to push it up to 3,000 a day. Again, that math's it doesn't work out. You can't just do mass deportation of people that, granted, most of the people that came here illegally did it because they wanted a better life and escaping something bad. But you also have state and non-state actors taking advantage of the open borders to come in here and developing cells within the United States, waiting for an October 7th attack here in the United States at some point in time. We need to focus our efforts in finding those and taking them out first. And then, of course, your criminals, they need to go. And then as that's going to take a long time, and during that time, hopefully we'll find a system where it'll be somewhat fair for those who are just really looking for a better life, where they've have proven that even though they came here illegally, that they've proven somehow that they've contributed to society, that they have some sort of program that they can enter to rehabilitate and find citizenship in the right way. I don't have an answer to that because a simple answer to a very complicated problem. But I know that we need to focus on the priorities first.
I agree. Prioritizing are almost a threat assessment triage, if you will, to help guide that. Where I see a lot of people's concern and a lot of comments that I've gotten from different folks that watch the show is the manner in which ICE is conducting some of the raids. Most specifically, not being in uniform. I don't have a problem with the masks. I think I don't get what the issue with that is. To me, wearing a mask makes sense for a number of reasons, not just hiding your identity. There's a host of other ones that make sense. But I do think, like, seeing some of the videos of guys who are in blue jeans with a fucking t-shirt, body armor, a mask, Yeah,
I can see a problem with that. It could be anybody.
Right. I mean, so like me and 5 of my buddies could dress like that and go kidnap fucking 9 people, and you'd be like, oh, it must be an ICE group. Slap a black and yellow patch on your body armor that just says ICE on it. Like, to me, there needs to be a standardized uniform for those groups. But, you know, I'm not going to say that's neither here nor there. I think that's an important component for that verifiability. Yes, can that be copied? Sure. It's way harder to do that, especially in mass. More importantly, though, is what I think the administration and ICE should be more transparent with to hopefully clear some of this up is communicating what their method for identifying the people that they're deporting is. Now, I know there's an element of revealing a playbook that the more you communicate, this is how we're going about it, the easier it is to combat that. But I do see a potential issue with, you know, groups of law enforcement officials that are not very easily identified, that are just swooping into places and rounding people up. Like, I just want to know, what are you basing, who you're grabbing, why are you grabbing them, and how are you deciding that this is the person that I want to grab? Like, what are you doing to verify that that's the person that you're going after, and what drove that train to get you to that point? I think there has to be
some more transparency.
There has to be,
Yeah.
you know. Again, I'm not opposed to, you know, if you want to say rounding up, you know, grabbing people who aren't supposed to be here, who are violent threats to this country. I'm all for getting them the fuck out of here. Mm-hmm. But I would like to know how they're going about doing that, because to me, there's, you know, a host of videos out there that don't really give you much warm and fuzzy for that being a very thorough and systematic process.
Yeah, they have a PR issue. They need to. I do agree. I think the common denominator in a lot of things that we've talked about is transparency. You know, from the Epstein files to this, I think it's very much needed. Get people to buy in on what's happening, even from the other side. Because if you're just snatching people up, and of course one side is just saying, oh, you're just snatching up just family members of innocent people who's trying to have a better life, that doesn't work well for us. Yeah, some more transparency, and I like what you said. You know, this is why we're taking Joe Blow off the street. And yes, they should have more standardized uniforms. So it can't be just a bunch of dudes in masks that decide, hey, let's go pick somebody up and say we're ICE. They can start a whole new can of worms with cartel snatching people off the street and saying, oh yeah, we're ICE.
Yeah, sex traffickers. I mean, there's a million ways that could be taken advantage of that none of them are good. You know, to me, the trickiest part is the millions of people who are here illegally. That's the only rule that was broken. And there's, you know, instances at this point where you're talking about decades of porous borders and people coming here illegally that, you know, have started businesses, started families, you know, have had children who have served in the military, who have been to war for this country.
Yeah.
To me, that's a tough fucking spot to be in, to just be like, well, tough shit, you know, you're still out of here. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be consequences. I think there has to be consequences, no matter what you've brought to the table. If you did it here, you know, in a manner which you broke the law, like, I'm not saying it even necessarily means that you need to be thrown out of the country, but there's got to be some sort of consequence.
Yeah.
Do you have a position on that element of that population where, you know, they're not MS-13 gangbangers that have been trafficking kids and funneling fentanyl into high schools? It's, you know, a mom and a dad that came here 30 years ago that had a family of 4 that all were born in this country, grew up in this country, and you know, 2 of the kids served in the military, the other 2 are a doctor and a lawyer. Does it make sense to say, well, you still broke the rules, you're out of here?
No, it doesn't make sense to just throw them out. Yeah, there should be some sort of accountability where maybe they pay, whether that be a fine or whatnot. But if they have proven that they have contributed to this country and served in this country, then there should be a way for out. And I'm not meaning out of the country, but out of this situation that they're in. And all that takes, a lot of that, it all comes down to money. How much money can we invest to more people, for more programs for that to happen? And again, that's taking money to stop the money that's going overseas to other countries and bringing it back to the theme of America First. Making America First, we will have those resources to be able to develop the programs to get the manpower to do all of that. And I agree. It shouldn't be just black and white, because we don't live in a black and white world. There's several shades of gray. And for those instances, yes, there should be some sort of clemency.
Yeah.
But you have to pay for it
Yeah.
in one way or another.
Yeah, there's got to be a consequence. I think. Again, yeah. I mean, we can repeat it over and over. There just needs to be more transparency across the board. So it kind of hit all of the big ticket items. I'm not going to say last but not least. I'm curious. You've mentioned it a little bit, but is there this is what sets me apart from my opponent and why you should vote for me over him?
Yeah, I escaped from a communist country. I hate communism, and I know what that looks like. And I'm seeing how America is slowly heading towards that path. It starts with socialism that evolves into communism. And it is not the path that I ever want to see America follow, and I don't want to see America do that. And what else sets me apart is I didn't become a congressman without having a background in business and developing programs for global companies, for owning my own business. I know what it takes to struggle, to make payroll, to build businesses, to create jobs. And I think that's very important when you're creating laws that affect businesses and small businesses and companies. The other thing is, I understand what it's like from outside of America, but I have a unique perspective in what that looks like from the other side and how rare this country is, and it's worth defending, so much so that I'm willing to give up a lot of my own life, sacrificing my treasure, time, and exposure for my family to run for office. And the difference is I pledged a 3-term limit. I don't plan on doing this for the rest of my life. I'm not a career politician. I never wanted to be a politician. I'm doing this because there's a need for somebody to step up to protect what is the most beautiful country in the world.
Yeah. Amen on that. I love, the positions you take, just the overall principles that you stand for, and I just think, it's such an amazing story and what you've managed to do with your life, and the reflection back on this country and how much you value this country is so important for people in that position, whether you were born here or not.
Yeah,
I think you should value the liberties and the backbone that is this country the same, irrespective of being born here or not. And I love your approach on all of it.
I would say that, again, I was able to achieve the American dream in my lifetime. I couldn't have done it anywhere else. If I had gone to Canada or France, I would not have been able to do that. I came here with literally just the clothes on our backs. I was able to accomplish a lot of things. Went to Harvard Business School that I never thought I would be able to do. Build a program for a global company, and now running for Congress. Again, it's not because I'm extraordinary as a person. It's because the country gives a person that opportunity to do so, as long as you're willing to work for it and step up. And you can't do that anywhere else.
Yeah. My hat's off to you. I mean, that's a ballsy move, and I'm proud of you for even trying it. I really am, because that's a daunting task. But I love to see it. Is there a singular message that you want your constituents or potential constituents to take away from this interview?
Yeah, I go everywhere and people find out that I served, and they always say, "Thank you for your service." And my response to that is, it's because you're worth it. Americans are worth it. This country's worth it.
Yeah. I love it. Can I make one recommendation in terms of, take it or leave it. Maybe I'm an asshole for even bringing it up, but to me, if I was running and somebody asked me, why are you running? What are your most important things? To me, what sets what sets, I think, any potential candidate apart from anyone else is if the almost default answer, and I don't mean that in a non-cerebral, I'm not thinking about it way, but just in the hierarchy of what's important, is that, to me, step one is preserving the rights that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and what they afford this nation's population to be protected. That is the envelope and the umbrella that encompasses every other thing that I'm fighting for and worried about. I think, if you let that be your North Star, or your compass, your lighthouse, whatever cliched, cheesy adage you want to tack onto it, I don't think you can go wrong. Is that, what does the Constitution say? Well, it says this. Well, then that's what we should do. Not to say that you don't think, but to me, if you use that as your benchmark starting point for how you navigate any policy or issue position, I know I love to hear that, and I think most people do that have a sense of patriotism as it relates to preserving what this nation is, how it was built, and how it needs to be maintained, is that being kind of the overarching principle. That's my take on it. But
I agree 100%. That's what, my quotes that I chose in my back of my T-shirts is a Thomas Jefferson quote. When the government fears the people, you have liberty.
Yeah. I don't think they do at this point, which is kind of a scary
Working
prospect. On it. Yeah, we're working on it, hopefully. What didn't I ask you that I should have?
What made me finally decide to finish school? Having kids. Having kids changed a lot of things. I've had a lot of titles in my life, combat vet, and this war, that war, Harvard grad. But the title I'm most proud of is being a dad. I've got a son that's 7 years old and a daughter that's 4. I started late in life. Much better father now than I would have been if I had it sooner. But I ratcheted down. I went savage when it came down to, hey, I'm going to finish this damn undergrad degree. Stayed at work till about 8 o'clock at night and knock out my classes. And came in the office just to have some peace and quiet on the weekends and knock out some classes. And then after I got my undergrad, I thought, hey, you know what? Why not try to see what the next mountain is? So applied for Harvard Business School. And then I got in. I was like, well, damn, I got to finish that too. So, I went through the Program for Leadership Development, which is their alternative MBA equivalent. You don't actually get a diploma, but it's a 9-month course. And the top professors from the MBA course teach that. And the difference is, to go to the MBA program, you have to have 2 years of experience. In the PLD program, you have to have 10 years of experience, and mostly it's for senior managers, vice presidents, and above. And I got through that the same way, too, with my second child. It took, like I said, over a year for me to get that done. And you graduate with the alumni status from Harvard Business School.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's just being a savage when it comes to accomplishing your goals and just not quitting when you're at the top of the mountain. You look across and you see all the mountains that you got to go for, and you got to make yourself down, and you're at the bottom of the mountain, and you look up, it's very intimidating.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, like, starting back in school after being out for a long time was very intimidating. Didn't think I could do it, but you just got to take one step at a time, and you make it on top.
Yeah. I love it. Couple of quick Patreon questions. Claire says, wow, he's a deserving immigrant many Americans like myself rightly value. Curious about your take on French influence and aggression on his culture.
I have no problems with the French. That was beyond my time. That's just like saying, with the slavery stuff, it was beyond our time. We gain a lot from the French. Yeah.
So no love lost?
No.
Gretchen asks, what does it mean to be an American?
You have to love the country you're in. And it shouldn't be ashamed to be a patriot. And it seems like it's fashionable to not be a patriot anymore. And I don't understand that. To be American is you love your country above all else. If you don't, find the country you love and move there. It's also, you don't have to serve in the military, but you got to contribute somehow. I can't tell you how rare this country is. And if you don't do your part to preserve what we have here and our culture, it's going to be gone. And we can't let that happen.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I love what you're about. Your takes on your positions and just your approach overall. I find very refreshing, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come sit down and answer questions. I wish you nothing but the best, and if I could vote for you, I would.
It's Nick Tran for Texas.com.
Yeah.
You can learn more about me, who I am, and what I'm fighting for.
Amen. I do have some swag. Is it
Awesome.
swag or swag? I appreciate the shirt and the hat that you brought. You got the commemorative coin there, if you have a coin collection.
I do.
Got some,
What bet does it?
got some Marcus Aurelius quotes on there, and also in the white box, I think something that will match your footwear fairly well.
Awesome. You got to give this to me.
Oh, yeah.
Handshake. Appreciate you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. And in that box there, can match your shit kickers. It opens from the bottom of the front.
Okay. Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah, so maybe some event you're doing, rock the mic drop buckle with your shit kickers.
Yeah, that'll
and,
be definitely a conversational piece.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Love to see a picture of it sometime. So thank you again for coming, man. I appreciate you. And again, I wish you all the success in the world. I'd love to see you in that position and making all the changes. And should that happen, I'd love to get your agreement to come back on the show if you find yourself in that position after you've been in it long enough to be able to say this is what it's like there.
I would love to.
Okay, great.
Thank you for having me. Like I said, the people that have sat in this chair are just absolute legends, and for me to have a seat here, it's amazing, and I'm grateful.
Well, it's absolutely deserved, so I appreciate you. Thank you much.
Thank you, Mike.
To you guys, I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, you can choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.